Alfred Czech was only 12 when he earned the Iron Cross for pulling wounded German soldiers to safety amid crossfire, using his father's cart as a makeshift ambulance. He rescued 12 men before a bullet tore through his lung and Soviet forces took him prisoner. Coming home in 1947, he learned his father had passed away. A heartbreaking homecoming for a boy who had already given so much. Polish spy Krystyna Skarbek worked for British intelligence and once escaped Gestapo execution by biting down on her tongue until it bled, convincing captors she had tuberculosis. Her missions saved dozens of lives through sheer daring. Yet for all her courage, she died impoverished and forgotten in London back in 1952. Inside Nazi concentration camps, roll calls happened daily alongside brutal sorting of new arrivals. Those judged capable of labor were pulled aside for forced work, while women, children, and the elderly were typically marched straight to the gas chambers. Families were ripped apart within seconds. On Saipan, in 1944, Marines watched in silence as one of their own crumpled to the ground. Relentless heat, combat stress, and the sheer trauma of battle pushed countless soldiers toward mental collapse. War's psychological scars often outlasted its physical ones. Ira Hayes helped raise the flag on Iwo Jima and became a household name. Yet he privately battled alcoholism and PTSD for years. Despite standing at the center of one of the war's most legendary photographs, he ultimately died alone, never free of the trauma that haunted him. Somewhere in the Egyptian desert, a British soldier paused before a comrade's grave. A simple cross, marked by German hands, honored an unidentified English pilot. Gestures like this reminded the world that humanity could survive, even amid war. Japanese forces unleashed horrific violence on Nanjing in 1937. Civilians and soldiers who had surrendered were bound, hauled to remote sites, and killed, many buried while still alive. This reign of terror is believed to have claimed roughly 200,000 lives. By 1944, women and children stepping off trains at Auschwitz-Birkenau were routinely separated from the men and sent directly toward death. Close to 1 million Jews perished there, many lured into gas chambers under the guise of taking a simple shower before Zyklon B was released. Czesława Kwoka, just 14, was sent to Auschwitz in 1942 as part of Nazi efforts to erase Polish identity. Her final photograph shows bruising from beatings inflicted by guards. Not long after, she was murdered with a phenol injection to the heart, one among thousands of children who suffered identical fates. In January 1944, a Japanese soldier surrendered to U.S. Marines in the Marshall Islands. Fearing hidden explosives or suicide attacks, they forced him to strip before accepting his surrender. Japanese military doctrine treated surrender as shameful, making moments like this both rare and tense. Roger Godfrin stood alone as the only child to survive the massacre at Oradour-sur-Glane. On June 10, 1944, Nazi soldiers rounded up 643 villagers, including 500 women and children, locked them inside a church, and burned it down. Today, the scorched ruins stand as a permanent reminder of that atrocity. On December 7, 1941, two women near military housing at Pearl Harbor noticed aircraft bearing red insignias overhead, marking the start of Japan's surprise assault. More than 2,400 people lost their lives, over 100 of them aboard the USS Arizona alone. Amid the chaos of bombed ships and planes, America was pulled into war the very next day. A photograph of a freed 18-year-old Russian girl at Dachau captures her hollow, distant gaze. Years of starvation, cruelty, and fear left many survivors physically wasted and emotionally broken. Liberation offered a fresh start, though true healing would take a lifetime to reach. In 1966, a photo captured a legless Soviet veteran balanced on a homemade skateboard, resting before an eternal flame, a striking image of endurance. Nearly 14 million Soviet soldiers died during World War II. And for those who lived, the trauma rarely faded. Just 2 days after Germany surrendered, on May 7, 1945, crowds gathered joyfully at Amsterdam's Dam Square. Without warning, German sailors opened fire, killing as many as 32 people. The massacre stunned a city that believed peace had finally arrived, exposing the absurdity of violence even at war's close. Even within the horrors of World War II, compassion still found room to exist. American doctors treated enemy wounded, SS soldiers included, honoring their medical duty to help any human being regardless of uniform. It revealed a quiet truth. Most soldiers on every side were simply following orders, struggling to survive amid chaos. Camps run by Japan, Germany, and the Soviet Union subjected prisoners to starvation, illness, and grueling forced labor. Some inmates survived on under 600 calories daily while battling dysentery, scurvy, and infection, all while being made to build railways and airfields under constant guard. Some kept secret diaries just to hold on to their sanity, and roughly 1 in 3 did not survive. As cities crumbled under war, civilians pushed wheelbarrows and prams loaded with the elderly, children, or whatever belongings they could grab. With roads destroyed, transport gone, and bombs still falling, people did whatever they could to save lives. These desperate escapes became lasting symbols of determination and devotion to family. Lepa Radic, a 17-year-old Yugoslav partisan, took up arms against the Nazis as part of the resistance. Captured and tortured, she never gave up her comrades' names. She was publicly hanged on February 8, 1943, her last words declaring, "You will know them when they come to avenge me." Polish resistance fighter Witold Pilecki chose to be imprisoned at Auschwitz voluntarily, aiming to document Nazi crimes from within. He built a covert resistance network inside the camp and escaped roughly 3 years later. In the ruins of Singapore, a father and daughter sat quietly sharing a bowl of rice. Once the city fell to Japan in February 1942, ordinary life ceased to exist. Their neighborhood lay shattered by bombs, leaving only silence, hunger, and the will to carry on one meal at a time. At Stalingrad, Soviet troops fought forward through mud, blood, and burning wreckage. The 1942-43 battle ranks among history's deadliest, claiming more than 2 million lives. Every block and building became its own separate battlefield in a city that turned into a graveyard. World War II displaced more than 60 million people. Civilians across France, Poland, Belgium, and beyond fled carrying only what they could manage. Families walking for days and pushing elders in wheelbarrows, never certain where their next shelter or danger would come from. In the Kremlin during June 1941, Stalin sat frozen in silence upon hearing that Germany had launched the largest invasion in history. Operation Barbarossa had begun. Within weeks, millions of Soviet lives were lost as the Eastern Front descended into a war of total annihilation. Inside an emptied church, a lone British soldier knelt between rows of silent pews. He prayed not just for his own survival, but for a broken world. That same day, elsewhere in ruined homes and open fields, soldiers and civilians alike turned to prayer, faith becoming their final refuge amid collapsing certainty. A German soldier held 12 years in Soviet captivity was finally reunited with the son he hadn't seen since infancy, released in 1956. Their reunion underscored just how much war could steal from families, time that could never be given back. During the Battle of Voronezh in July 1942, a photograph captured a Soviet commissar leading troops from a trench, pistol raised. Moments later, he was killed. The image froze the desperation and sacrifice of Soviet forces fighting to stop the German push toward the Volga. Across Britain, children practiced gas mask drills amid fears of chemical warfare. In 1941, some schools, including one in Kingston, even used tear gas to prepare students for the real thing. Millions of masks were handed out nationwide as a precaution against German attacks. In Karachev, in 1943, a young Soviet recruit bid farewell to his family before heading to the front lines. Like countless others sent with barely any training, he faced near certain death. This scene of parting repeated itself millions of times in villages throughout the USSR, where war had become an unwelcome inheritance. After the war, thousands of German women were made to sweep streets and rebuild shattered cities like Berlin and Prague as a form of punishment. Working under armed guard and often watched by former prisoners, this forced labor became a symbolic act of public humiliation and enforced reconstruction. In Vienna in 1947, a mother held up a photo of her missing son, hoping a recently freed prisoner might recognize him. As Austria welcomed its first 600 citizens released from Soviet camps in the East, such scenes repeated again and again. Some families finally found closure, others met only silence. Yet all held on to the fragile hope that their loved ones hadn't been forgotten. The Battle of Okinawa, waged from April through June 1945, became the bloodiest campaign of the entire Pacific War. Over 12,500 Americans and nearly 77,000 Japanese died as the island's caves and hills turned into death traps. During the Bataan Death March in April 1942, exhausted American and Filipino prisoners were forced to walk more than 62 miles through brutal heat with no water. An estimated 5,000 to 10,000 Filipinos and roughly 650 Americans died before ever reaching the prison camp. Amid London's wreckage, British soldiers pulled injured children from buildings flattened by the Blitz. Between 1940 and 1941, near-daily air raids destroyed over 1 million homes and claimed thousands of lives, including children asleep in beds they had believed were safe. A 1942 photograph shows a Soviet soldier tenderly feeding a frightened little girl. Surrounded by burned-out homes and eerie silence, the moment stood in sharp contrast to the brutality defining the Eastern Front. A rare flash of compassion amid devastation. Outside Leningrad, German soldiers collapsed in their trenches as temperatures dropped below -22 degrees Fahrenheit. Starving, freezing, and too weak to fight, many died not from bullets, but from frostbite and disease. Their weapons froze solid, their bodies gave out, and winter became their most lethal enemy. After the carnage of Omaha Beach, wounded American troops received first aid right on the sand they had just fought to take. Blood mixed with seawater as explosions rang out overhead. On D-Day alone, more than 2,400 U.S. soldiers were killed or wounded before even reaching the front lines. As Nazi forces pushed forward in 1941, the Red Army resorted to scorched earth tactics, torching villages and crops throughout Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia to slow the invasion. Soviet civilians paid the steepest price, watching their own army destroy their homes in desperate delaying acts. Many were left with nothing but ash and a bitter sense of betrayal. Wounded veterans came home as shadows of the men they once were. Some, missing limbs, marched proudly in victory parades in defiance. Others withdrew into lives marked by lasting trauma. More than 1 million Allied and Axis soldiers underwent amputations, and despite public celebration, many quietly struggled to rebuild their lives and minds. A chilling photograph from Hiroshima reveals the city flattened after the first atomic bomb fell on August 6, 1945. Roughly 70,000 people died instantly, with over 140,000 more succumbing to radiation in the months after. Survivors, known as hibakusha, carried lifelong physical and psychological wounds. Between 50,000 and 200,000 women from China, Korea, Malaysia, and the Philippines were coerced by the Japanese military into serving as so-called comfort women, a euphemism masking sexual slavery. Many were tricked or abducted at young ages and trapped in military brothels, enduring abuse day after day. Japanese soldier Shuichi Yokoi spent nearly 3 decades hidden in Guam's jungles, never learning the war had ended. His discovery in 1972 shocked the nation. On camera, he stated, "I am ashamed to have returned alive," reflecting the deep sense of honor embedded in Japanese military culture. Janusz Korczak, a doctor, writer, and educator, ran a Warsaw orphanage for Jewish children throughout the Nazi occupation. When roughly 200 of his orphans were slated for deportation to Treblinka, he turned down chances to save himself and chose to stay with them. He comforted the children until the very end, dying alongside them in the gas chambers in August 1942. A harrowing 1942 photo from occupied Ukraine shows a Nazi soldier aiming his rifle at a woman shielding her child with her own body. The image reflects the brutal killings carried out by the Einsatzgruppen, Nazi death squads operating behind German lines. Thousands of Jews were torn from their homes, made to dig their own graves, and executed. To carry out campaigns of retaliation, the Nazis formed death squads made up of violent criminals, psychopaths, and rapists, given free rein to commit extreme brutality. Thousands of civilians and Soviet prisoners were killed without trial in these terror campaigns sweeping across Eastern Europe. Hans-Georg Henke, only 16 and serving as an anti-aircraft assistant, was photographed in tears after American troops captured him in the war's final days. As Germany fell apart, boys as young as 15 were thrown into combat, untrained and unready, sacrificed by a collapsing regime. Near Moscow in December 1941, an elderly woman embraced a young Soviet soldier. At that point, many civilians feared defeat was near, but the arrival of Siberian reinforcements turned the tide, halting the German advance and sparking the Soviet counteroffensive. During the Blitz, it wasn't only people who suffered. Pets became casualties of the nightly bombing too. In South London, rescuers pulled tiny puppies from the rubble, cradling them like fellow survivors. Children who refused to leave their animals behind in shelters often helped save them, turning despair into small moments of comfort. A worn, demoralized German soldier rests after a punishing march through the Caucasus in 1943. Battling harsh terrain, ambushes, and disease, he faced an enemy as much within his own body as outside it. Starvation and exposure killed more than 200,000 soldiers in the region, as nature proved a merciless foe. On Iwo Jima in 1945, a soldier reads a letter from home, hands trembling. Surrounded by craters and the dead, these fragile pages held onto memories, love, and meaning far beyond the battlefield. Read again and again like sacred text, such letters reminded soldiers of the world they'd left and hoped to return to. Across occupied Dutch villages, resistance sometimes took a quiet shape. Rather than signs or weapons, villagers gathered with bowed heads, kneeling silently in the streets to pray for neighbors taken by the Nazis. Gentle as these gatherings appeared, occupiers saw them as acts of defiance, and many participants were arrested on charges of inciting unrest. Civil disobedience in 1941, including labor strikes and religious protests, marked a turning point.